Thanks, everybody, and good afternoon. We didn't realize we were coming right after the snacks, so we'll step it up, try to keep the tempo going. Ike Squale, Entaba Ben Hyman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm really privileged and grateful to be joining you today from ancestral and unceded Snuneymuxw territory here on Vancouver Island. Really sorry I can't be there in Ottawa today. I've been attending Access conferences since about 2003 and always get so much out of them, especially in real life. But my thanks to the conference organizers for again organizing Hybridy Goodness and for all the support. I'm really grateful that my colleague Renee is joining me today. Do you want to just say a quick hello, Renee?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us share some information about the Connected Coast project. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the unceded traditional territory of the Lakwatak speaking people, and honored to be doing so.
Awesome.
Back over to you.
Thank you. And thanks to the reviewers who took time to consider our presentation proposal and offered really helpful questions and suggestions. I'm going to deal with the context up front and leave all the good bits and awesome bits for Renee in the back. So this is what the shape of the presentation will do. We're already done with the first bit, and now we'll just get straight into it. So in 2016, many of you may remember the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, or CRTC, declared finally broadband internet as a basic telecommunications service. Took them many decades to get there. CRTC ordered that internet service providers do a better job, and they set a minimum threshold for broadband speeds of at least 50 megabits per second down and 10 megabits per second up by the end of 2021. So I checked, and this morning, according to CRT's website, 6 years after their order and a year after their deadline, while 89.5% of Canadians have that 50/10 service available, only 53% of rural communities do. The digital divide is alive and well in Canada. So in context of truth and reconciliation, I'm going to speak some truth. First, connectivity public policy in Canada has been a complete disaster when measured from the perspective of rural, remote, and especially First Nations communities. Suffice it to say that, and I'll say this quickly in case anyone holds it against me, providers like TELUS and Bell are certainly accountable, but so too are the extraordinarily poor coordination between various levels of government, the lack of creativity and care taken to the connectivity file in the first place, and incredibly insufficient benchmarking and enforcement over time. In addition, and we can tell many stories about this, I'm sure, major internet service providers have and continue to significantly overrepresent their service offerings while simultaneously and deliberately acting to frustrate community-led connectivity initiatives. I despair. The truth is that rural, coastal, and northern First Nations communities have been disproportionately impacted by Canada's public policy connectivity failure. Truth is also that public, post-secondary, and government libraries on this coast for certain have and continue to underserve or unserve rural First Nations communities. And the last truth I'll say is our provincial and national associations in the library sector have not been strong enough advocates or allies on this file. So this is a map of Vancouver Island Regional Library service area. We serve about 500,000 people across 42,000 square kilometers, from Haida territory in the north to Sooke territory in the south, and the traditional territories of the Nch'elneth on the west coast, all the way on the east to the territories of the Newhalk near Bella Coola. All of the orange dots you see, I don't know if that's coming through, the orange dots are our 39 public library branch locations. And all the other dots are First Nations population centers, according to BC Stats. So I know that we at VIRL have much work to do as we continue to walk in two worlds. As an 86-year-old settler organization serving and living on the territories of 53 First Nations, what jumps out at me with this map is that more than 139 communities in this region still do not have fiber connectivity or anything near 50 down and 10 up. But the really exciting thing, and why we're here, is because they soon will through Connected Coast. And it's really a very powerful game changer and a paradigm shift, not just for libraries like VRL, but for all libraries serving populations on the West Coast, or indeed, if you're post-secondary like Carleton, and you have students that come from the West Coast, this matters to you in terms of service delivery, access to content and services. I hope our presentation today may pique your curiosity and inspire you to lead from wherever you are to help put pressure on until everyone who wants it has 50 down and 10 up or better in every corner of this country and with renewed urgency. Nice upget. I'm going to pass it to Renee for the good bits now.
All right, thank you, Ben. The Connected Coast project is a subsea fiber optic network which will bring high-speed connectivity to over 139 underserved First Nation and rural remote communities on BC's coast. The 3,400 kilometer network will stretch from north in the Prince Rupert area across to Haida Gwaii and south to Vancouver and around Vancouver Island. It will allow more than 175,000 British Columbians to access high-speed internet. Okay, next slide. The Connected Coast project is a backbone project and doesn't include last-mile infrastructure. Once the technology reaches the shore, as illustrated in the diagram, internet service providers will be able to connect to the technology and then provide high-speed services to their customers. Next slide. So I would like to spend some time and explain how a small regional local government got into the business of the telecommunications industry. It's been a priority of our board for several years to improve connectivity. And as Ben had alluded to, throughout our region, our member municipalities and residents in the area have significantly lower than the standard 5010 service. And this continues to be a challenge today. Many residents have less than 10 megabytes down and 2 megabytes upload, unacceptable to be able to function online today. The regional district had been advocating to large internet service providers and senior governments for more than a decade to improve these service levels. And many other regional districts on the island were also experiencing similar challenges. The SRD back in 2017 completed research, developed a broadband study, and built a business case. This business case included the concept of a subsea network around Vancouver Island. In the north, City West, which is a medium-sized internet service provider and a subsidiary of the city of Prince Rupert, was also looking to do the same. They wanted to improve the redundancy of their network through a subsea cable to connect to Vancouver at the Vancouver Internet Exchange. Both organizations submitted funding applications to provincial and federal programs. They did this independently, and then the funders approached both parties and encouraged them to work together to create one network. So this resulted in a joint venture partnership between the Strathcona Regional District and City West for a $47 million project. The ability of the two organizations to collaborate and to build on their own expertise in business networks has been key to the success of the project so far. Funding for the Connected Coast network has come from 3 different federal and provincial programs listed there on the right. Next slide, please. A core value of this joint venture and the project has been partnerships. This approach has expanded the network beyond the 139 sites for rural and remote communities to include a partnership with the Canadian Coast Guard. This arrangement has increased the number of sites on the network to include additional lighthouse and search and rescue stations. So this will really improve safety and the Canadian Coast Guard's ability to respond and also be able to recruit staff to work at those rural and remote locations. Another partnership has been with the Natural Resource Canada, and they have added their early earthquake warning system to the network. So we have partnered and are in discussions with several small internet service providers and internet societies to improve service for their clients. Most importantly, I wanted to highlight the work that the project partners are doing to advance opportunities for reconciliation. The network will bring digital equity to many coastal First Nations. City West is also partnering with several communities on last mile infrastructure projects. During the construction, the project procurement has also included opportunities for First Nations. Next slide. Just quickly, the key accomplishments so far, we're a third complete the project, and we have over 1,000 kilometers laid between north of Prince Rupert down to Cabell River, and just last week we finished the Vancouver to the island section. Next slide. The Git Gat First Nation is one of our partners, and they've been hired to use some of their watercraft. They reconfigured a fishing vessel to do the work, and I'd like to share a short video here where one of their band members, Theodore Clifton, shares his perspective. He's very proud that he, his dad, and his brother are working on the project, and really highlights the difference improved connectivity will have for their community. If we can play that, it's a short clip.
My personal struggles with internet and weather has a lot to do with how good or how bad it is. Once it gets hardwired in, it's going to make the biggest difference and bring us up to par, and it's really not dependable at the moment. You know, as if you were in Prince Rupert or Vancouver.
All right, so that was a really quick highlight of the project, and I believe we have time to welcome any questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Renee. Thanks for walking us through that. So I've just got up on screen here all the ways you can keep watch on how this project's proceeding, and by all means reach out in the back channels if you have any questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Ben and Renee. What a great presentation. It's always good to be reminded of the digital divide. For those of us who spend a lot of time in urban centers, it's easy to let it slip our minds. So thank you so much. We have one question already. Speaking of digital divide, what was your reaction when Rogers' network crashed, causing a nationwide outage and the government's rapid rebuke of telecoms?
Yeah, I can take that. Okay. Wasn't that hilarious and somewhat predictable, and even more so the report and recommendations that came forward afterwards, which is that the telcos fundamentally need to do better to help each other out. I've pondered a lot over the years how if Canada may have just started with a public first approach to all of this, we would have been so much further ahead. I mean, I don't want to negate the challenges, the enormity of the challenges. The video gives you a sense of just how ridiculous the work is to get fiber everywhere, and it's a big, expensive country to cover. But I think we've seen clearly time after time after time over decades now that the telcos cannot be the folks that advance this on behalf of all Canadians. And so the Rogers outage really just punctuated that in several hilarious and very frustrating ways.
Great, thank you. Another question, it may have been mentioned, but how come the minimum upload-download rates are not enforceable? Or maybe what are the ways that they can be enforced?
It's a great one. Renee, feel free to hop in if you have any ideas.
Well, I was just going to say we did a lot of work last year trying to dispute some of the figures that, say, the telecos have expressed that they are able to deliver, but customers are not experiencing those. So there was a number of communities that did that as well. So the BC government did do a short study on looking at those disparities and how they may be able to address them. Yeah, I couldn't really explain how the government or why they're not enforcing that 50-10 limit or threshold. And you know, this project we're aiming to get much greater than the minimum 50-10. Customers will have much more than the 50-10 limit, and in fact, as a result, we'll have just the same service that you would in a major urban center and have up to 1,000 or 1 gigabyte of service if that's what the customer would like.
Great, thank you. I think we have one more question. Do we have time for one more, Sarah? Yeah, awesome. It's an easy one, very, very easy with this one. How do you go about procuring equipment, cabling, etc., when you're not an ISP with existing partnerships? And this is actually in the question, you can't just walk down to Best Buy.
That's right. So as part of the project, we have project managers, and City West is, because they are in the business already, they're an internet service provider. Well, sorry, that's more for last mile, but we do have Baylinks Network, who is our contractor for the project, and they're very familiar and have done projects elsewhere, and so they're the ones who are procuring the technology and the equipment needed for the project.